Hello and welcome to Adrienne Ross Squared, squaring off from A to Z. I'm going to pick up where I left off yesterday. I talked yesterday about President Trump's address to Congress, in particular, how Democrats couldn't find the heart to stand or applaud about anything. I focused on Jocelyn's story, the 12-year-old who was brutally murdered allegedly by an illegal alien, and DJ, the 13-year-old who has had 13 brain surgeries. And some of you in the comments pointed out some of the other things. The man who was finally returned home after being detained for however long. I don't even know how many years he was gone. He's home. He was there with his mother. They couldn't stand for that. And something I'm going to get into today, and that is a young female athlete who, because of ridiculous policies, received a traumatic brain injury because she had to compete against a guy. So we're going to talk about that. But I want to start with a definition because it will set the stage for this discussion today. Remember, my background is in teaching English to be exact. And vocabulary is a huge part of that job. Google tells us that hypocrisy, let's start over here. It says, hypocrisy, a noun, the practice of claiming to have moral standards or beliefs to which one's own behavior does not conform. Pretense. Let's go for a more specific definition over here. This one says, hypocrisy is the practice of feigning to be what one is not or to believe what one does not. The word hypocrisy entered the English language in 1200 with the meaning the sin of pretending to virtue or goodness. Today, hypocrisy often refers to advocating behaviors that one does not practice. So why am I defining hypocrisy? Because that's exactly what these women are who showed up at the president's address wearing pink, and yet hypocrites, because just a few hours before on Monday, they, Senate Democrats, every single one of them voted against women. Let's take a look at what they were wearing again, some of the pictures, and why they were wearing them, and why that makes them complete and total hypocrites, as well as delusional. Here are some photos over on NPR.org. Yep. Democratic members of Congress listen as President Trump addresses a joint session of Congress at the Capitol. And you can see the women dressed in their pink throughout here. See a little bit of, I guess that's supposed to be pink over here, or maybe not. I don't know, but she's pinkish. And let's see. Let's keep it going. There's DJ. They weren't standing, as you recall, during this moment. And this is Jocelyn's mom and her sister here. But anyway, you can get a look right here. You can see the splattering of pink throughout the place. Here's some more pink over at CBSnews.com and why they were wearing pink, which I shared yesterday in that video. Check it out if you missed it. And they said that the color signifies, quote, our protest of Trump's policies, which are negatively impacting women and families. And they went on to say pink is a color of power and protest. And this was spoken by Representative Teresa Leger Fernandez of New Mexico. She said, pink is a color of power and protest. It's time to rev up the opposition and come at Trump loud and clear. Women down here, women cannot afford Trump. So back to hypocrisy. They're wearing pink because they're standing up for women, because they find President Trump to be detrimental to women, because they're so on the pro-woman train. Remember, though, hypocrisy It's about claiming to have moral standards or beliefs that don't match up, that don't line up. That's what hypocrisy is. That's what hypocrites do. You're feigning you believe in something, but your actions don't line up. You're virtue signaling, as we say. And why do I say that? Because we are living in a time where reality is not a thing for many people. So the issue with gender identity is that basically you are whoever you choose to identify as on that given day. And they want that in the schools, they want that in the marketplace. And for the sake of this conversation, I'm highlighting how they want that in sports. Former President Biden, he tried to push that, tried to gut Title IX. After all that has been done for women to have their spaces and their opportunities to shine, after all the fighting that Democrats claim they do in their pink outfits for women, we come to find out that they're hypocrites. So the day before they showed up in pink, they voted against something that would do what they pretend that they're trying to do and that they say Trump doesn't want to do. And that is caring about women. Their actions, I don't care what they're wearing, what color they're wearing. Their actions are the antithesis of what their mouth says they believe in. So the New York Post had this article on March 4th. Bill to ban trans athletes from girls and women's sports teams fails to advance in Senate. And it says Senate Democrats united Monday night to block a bill that would have barred transgender female athletes, that means men, from playing on girls and women's sports teams, delivering a setback to Republicans who have pushed for a ban since President Trump's reelection. I'm going to correct some wording here. It says delivering a setback to Republicans. Here's the thing. This should not be a Republican issue. It's not a setback to Republicans. Let's get this straight. It's a setback to humanity. It is a setback to women who are a part of humanity. I know it says humanity, but women are a part of humanity. So the setback is to our society. It's not to Republicans, because guess what? Democrat girls play sports too. Democrat women play sports too. So it should not be a political issue. But we saw when President Trump, and I'm going to get to that, when President Trump called out the young lady who got the TBI because of a dude playing volleyball, none of the women even clapped, stood, cared about the trauma she went through. And I'm not just talking about mental trauma. I'm talking about the physical trauma she went through. But they united, Democrats, to block that. So the Protection of Women and Girls in Sports Act needed 60 votes to clear the Senate's legislative filibuster, but could only manage 51, all from Republicans. Another 45 Democrats and Democrat-aligned independents voted to block the bill, with 4 lawmakers absent. How do you block a bill to protect women and what women and others have worked hard for, so that your little girls and your little nieces and granddaughters may have to play against dudes who, because of gender identity, which they tell us is fluid, says one thing that defies reality. Notice they say gender and not sex, because sex should be what, male or female. That should be your sex. And there should be sports for women or girls, sports for boys or girls based on that sex. You can't have what happened. So this week you identify your gender as male, but then next week you identify your gender as female. And these people want policies that would allow that kind of ridiculousness to the detriment of girls. So it says the bill would have enshrined Title IX protections based solely on a person's reproductive biology and genetics at birth. Seems fair enough to me. I remember President Trump saying during his address on Tuesday night that you are fine just the way God made you. Remember when, myself as a teacher or when back in the day, a youth leader in church, remember if somebody were to come to you and say, I feel like I'm not good enough, there would have been a time when we would have said, you are good enough. You are unapologetically good enough. You are created with a purpose. That's what I always told my students. I have a specific purpose and there's a plan for my life. I'm fine. Now we just go, okay, well, let me send you off to Tim Waltz so he can start chopping body parts. And what has happened to us? Not only hypocritical, but delusional. So anyway, it would have protected women, girls, and I think boys too, from these people who are like ravenous wolves who are so quick to come in and try to totally change who you are. We think about this as girls. This is for the sake of boys as well. This is abuse to boys and girls, this delusion. And polls show a majority of Americans are against allowing trans female athletes, meaning boys, to compete with biological girls and women, primarily on the grounds of fairness and safety. Now, this says, like I was just saying, this doesn't have to be a Republican or Democratic issue, said Senator Tommy Tuberville. Now, it says D, Alabama. He's not a Democrat. That's a typo. It should be R, Republican. And he used to be, he's the bill sponsor in the upper chamber and a former college football coach. He said this is about standing up for girls and women, which I know my Democratic colleagues also care about. I don't think so. And Senator John Thune went on to say, he's the majority leader. He said girls should not have to compete in sporting events that are stacked against them. And he wrote that on X ahead of the vote, trying to hope to appeal to some folks. Women deserve their own athletic opportunities that are not taken away by biological males who have their own spaces to compete. So this takes us back to the president's address on Tuesday, where he introduced everyone to his guest. He invited her to come. Her name is Peyton McNabb. I've just been talking about her. Her family had to have been football fans. Peyton McNabb, right? Anyway, let's take a look at what went down there and what she had to say about this whole situation. New York Post has an article, volleyball player hurt by trans opponent and honored by Trump, calls out Democrats for, quote, failing women. And this is, let me go down here to what President Trump shared about her during his address. When her girls' volleyball match was invaded by a male, he smashed the ball so hard in Peyton's face, causing a traumatic brain injury, partially paralyzing her right side and ending her athletic career. And this is what he said after introducing her to the audience. And again, Democrats, those women in pink also, did not show her the decency. A TBI, partially paralyzing her, and they could not clap and they could not stand because they don't care, apparently, because just the night before, they could have had an opportunity to do something different so that this doesn't happen again. And every single one of them had no desire to care about these women. And here it is. I'll go up now. It says the North Carolina volleyball star who suffered life-changing injuries at the hands of a trans opponent called it an incredible honor, quote, to be recognized by President Trump Tuesday night as she ripped hypocritical. They too understand vocabulary. As she ripped hypocritical Democrats for, quote, failing women. McNabb told the Post she was overwhelmed with emotions to have the president highlight her story. And this is what she said. What an incredible honor. I was just so honored to even be there as a guest of the president and first lady. That's just unreal. Such a surreal moment I'll never forget, said McNabb, 19. She still suffers cognitive issues and persistent headaches even 2 years after her injury. God bless her. So here she is, and she's next to Vice President J.D. Vance's wife, Miss Second Lady, I'll call her, of course, Usha Vance. Now, there she is. And of course, as we said, other people are standing, but no Democrats stood. So it says, I think that was the best speech he's ever given. It was so pro-American, and you could really feel it on one side. One side, the Democrats were really unprofessional and embarrassing yesterday in their actions. And this is, I think this is her speaking. Yeah, I believe this is McNabb speaking. Yep, from her vantage point, she could see the Democrats. She could see them who remain seated and stone-faced. And she just said how unprofessional and embarrassing. She's 19 and she's telling these grown folks how they're supposed to behave. She was 17 when she was injured, and it forced her to stop competing at a high level. And apparently she was a star. And since then, she became a powerful, persistent voice in advocating for fair, safe competition for female athletes. Good for her. Like Riley Gaines, who has been an ongoing voice. And here these women are. Here these women are. And she says they're failing women. Here they are. They couldn't care less. Couldn't care less. Ridiculous. And again, it's not like the country isn't in agreement with President Trump. A study that or survey that was done in this past summer says 66% of U.S. adults oppose transgender girls competing on female sports teams. Yeah, duh. I wonder why. And it says it should be permitted either never, they said, or in rare cases. I don't know what the rare cases are, but still, the majority of people are not on board with this. And I just heard yesterday that California Governor Gavin Newsom is now on record as saying the same thing. California, in fact, in that survey there, that write-up of that survey I'm looking at also talks about people from California feeling very strongly the same way, because it's a no-brainer, and of course not everybody believes Gavin Newsom. I don't trust anything about him. He'll do whatever I feel he'll do whatever is politically advantageous. So whatever, I don't know what he thinks in any case, but even he is publicly saying it anyway. But somehow the Democrats in pink, the men, the women, Democrats don't seem to get it. And it boggles the mind that this is where we are. Something that should be a no-brainer. It's like this. How do you think it's okay? Like you're thinking this is about human rights. But what about the girls' human rights? What about the women's human rights? I said this last night in my members live for the Adrienne Ross show, the main channel. Make sure you check that out. The link is in the description of this video and subscribe over there. But in our members live, our weekly live, we talked about this issue. And I said that, do you think we would be hearing about Caitlin Clark? Will we know her name? Will we know Kate Martin's name? Will we know Diana Taurasi's name? Will we know these players, the Juju Watkins that people are talking about, the Paige Beckers that people are talking about? Would we know who these people are if they had to compete against guys? I mean, Caitlin Clark is great basketball player. Juju Watkins is a promising basketball player, but let's not get it twisted. A dude comes in there, everything is going to be different. Randomly, yeah, Caitlin out in the court playing one-on-one with a guy might be able to beat him. I've beaten many men in basketball, but I'm not so delusional to think that I'm going to beat guys night in, night out, day in, day out, and on a team environment with some dude. LeBron James going up against Caitlin Clark or Juju Watkins or something. It's just not right. And it's unfair. And it doesn't make sense to me. It's like robbing Peter to pay Paul. Somehow in their mind, they feel like transgenders are being discriminated against. And so in order to keep that from happening, I guess they feel like it's then okay to discriminate against girls. To me, it's sort of like right now, there's this whole fight there was with affirmative action and admissions practices in colleges. And so we've had people who have benefited from that. And I would argue that there was a time when that was necessary. I don't think we're still there. I think we've moved on from that. But in the meantime, right, for those who don't want to move on for that, then you've had other people like Asians in particular who were then discriminated against. So we sort of have robbed from Peter to pay Paul. So I think the answer to that in terms of sports is to let boys be boys and girls be girls. And if you feel like, well, transgenders, where do they fit? Then maybe there should be a league there. But you're noticing that mostly it's guys. And in some cases, it's on record that these are guys who could not cut it competing against other guys. So they decided that their identity was going to be girl. And now they're going to compete against girls. And who suffers? Girls. And like I said, I believe guys suffer too, because this is a cultural issue and a cultural rot, and it's delusion in our society. And we've got people trying to play God and encouraging kids who might be confused at times that they should bow to that confusion instead of the adults. There's a reason why adults are adults. Instead of adults steering them and loving them through it, not making them feel like trash. Telling them that they're loved, that God loves them, that there's a purpose and a plan, and that God didn't make any mistakes. That's what love is. Love is saying, I'm here to walk you through this difficult time. We also need to make sure we stand alongside these young girls, because we also know that some of these situations, particularly in schools, there's some issues going on in locker rooms and in bathrooms, and who's going to protect the girls? It's unreal, the delusion. That brings me to the Indiana fever. Those of you who are with the main channel, you know exactly what I'm talking about when I say the name, or who I'm talking about when I say the name Breonna Turner. Breonna Turner was picked up by the Indiana fever in free agency. And because she's such an activist and very vocal online, there were people who were not very, very comfortable with having her on the team. I've said my piece about it. I felt uncomfortable with it, but I said this organization, the Indiana Fever, has made some great moves, and the front office and the coach said, we are going to protect the locker room first and foremost. So I said, okay, if that's what they're saying, and we got the core players and Caitlin Clark, Aaliyah Boston, and Kelsey Mitchell saying that they were in on all the decisions, I'm like, okay, so they know what they're doing. Let's just see how it goes. Now, Breonna Turner has told us she is not just a basketball player, and she's going to continue to be, I guess they say, have Twitter fingers. So she has chimed in on this issue by sharing a post. So let's take a look at Miss Breonna Turner. I don't know if she's going to get a spot on the Indiana Fever, meaning keep her spot, if they're going to keep her there. But I know a lot of people hope she doesn't, because they don't trust that she's not going to go way off into the weeds, which she does. And she feels she has a right to. And you might feel she has a right to. But how can it affect the team and fans? Because some of these people have to come to understand that fans are buying tickets, are buying merch, and it can be a serious detriment when you start getting off into your activism. Let's take a look at her Twitter page and something she posted just the other day. Now, we already know that no sooner had the Indiana Fever announced her than she got on there and made some blanket statement. I'm anti this, I'm anti that, and just so you know, and this whole thing, right? She started right off the bat. Now, Apparently, she is blocking some Fever fans. I've heard. I don't spend a lot of time on X, so I would miss much of this. But people are watching now, thanks to the Caitlin Clark effect. And so people are not going to be able to just kind of ease through and say and do anything without pushback. And so I guess she's gotten some pushback. And so she started blocking people. But I'm not going to go to the stuff that she said before when she was signed. But just the other day, she posted this. This was March 4th. This was the day of President Trump's speech. She said, will society look, let me make this bigger. Will society look back on current U.S. politics as a comedy or a tragedy? I don't know if I'm supposed to laugh or cry whenever I read/watch about the antics of the U.S. government. So she's considering what the U.S. government is doing. This was, of course, the day of Trump's speech. She's considering this antics. Okay. Interesting. And she doesn't know if she wants to laugh or cry. Well, you know, Brianna, some of us feel the same way, but we're not thinking the same way you're thinking. Is that okay with you? So let's go back, because this is what I want to highlight right here. And this was posted by Bill Crystal, of all people, and she reposted it. And this also was the evening of President Trump's speech. And he wrote, stand with trans Americans. You don't have to understand everything about the transgender experience to know that Trump's acts of humiliation and dehumanization are unjust and dangerous. And again, she reposted this. And this is where they have it wrong. It is not dehumanizing. It is not humiliation if you say that men should not compete against women. Boys should not compete against girls. You don't have to understand everything about the transgender experience. This has nothing to do with understanding about their experience. What we do understand is that not allowing girls to thrive in their sports, that, Mr. Crystal and Miss Turner, that's what's unjust and dangerous. And this is the thing, and this came up in my members live as well last night. Everything, if you disagree, if you stand up and say and sign an executive order as President Trump did and say, hey, we want women to be able to compete as well. They have a right to be able to do that without getting their head knocked off and paralyzed and all this stuff. We want that. That's just right. That's just fair. That becomes translated as humiliation and dehumanization. It's not like anybody's going around dehumanizing anybody or trying to humiliate them. They're just saying that this is not your place. It used to be simple. If you were in third grade and you tried to get into the girls' bathroom and you were a boy, there used to be a time when a teacher could say, no, Johnny, that's your bathroom over there. Now that's considered dehumanization and humiliation. Never mind the girls, the little girls. They don't matter. You cannot speak reality. And here's the thing. They want us to go along with the delusion. It's one thing if you want to embrace the delusion. Now, it's a whole other thing when now you're asking me to participate in your delusion and you're endangering girls. So Breonna Turner decided to repost that. And Breonna Turner has me wondering what this year is going to look like if she is indeed a member of this team when the season starts. Because what happens when people disagree? One might say she has a right to her opinion. Okay, but does, let's say, Sophie Cunningham, does she have the same right if she posts something? Because it usually doesn't work like that. It usually works with one group assuming that they're taking the moral high ground and therefore everybody else is wrong. And then when you say something that you believe in that the vast majority of them may not believe in because they're woke as the day is long, then what? Does it work both ways? Usually not. And that's when we have an issue. I hope there is no issue, but Just saying, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. So why don't we just play basketball? That's just what I'm saying. I get the thought that she's got a right to what she believes in and everything. I'm just saying, does it work both ways? And what might that look like when it gets down to the nitty gritty? I know she's already played with Sophie Cunningham before, Phoenix. That was some time ago. A lot has changed, and Trump deranged syndrome is off the charts. Now you can't even speak facts, biology, science without being accused of humiliating others and dehumanizing them. That's where we are right now. So anyway, I just wanted to point out the ladies in pink, because Trump is against women, because they're standing up for women, and pink is a powerful color. Well, think about the little girls. Little girls, we dressed in little pink outfits who want to grow up and play sports. Do we care about them? Fair question. I welcome your answers. Get in the comment section. Be respectful, of course. Make sure, again, that you thumbs up this video. Hit subscribe if you've not made that commitment yet. Also, go on over to the Adrienne Ross Show and subscribe over there and check out what I got going on over there. I'll catch you next time, God willing. God bless you abundantly.